We're here right in San Francisco rehearsing for a 30th anniversary show, playing the songs from My Aim Is True with three of the members from Clover, the band that played with me on that record but never performed in public. And it's curious that it's brought to mind a lot of the story of how I came to have this guitar. Because I began the recording of the first record with a CBS era Telecaster. A friend of mine who was the drummer in my previous band when I was a semi-professional actually worked for Fender, and he could get company discount, and he got me a Telecaster brand new, straight up from the factory, out of the box, and the strings were so far from the neck it was set up like a dobro, and I knew so little about guitars. I thought that I was just unlucky and you couldn't change them, and I basically played it like that for a couple of years, including when I finally got a break and started making a record. So the first sessions for My Aim Is True, I was playing this terrible Telecaster, maple neck, blonde finished Telecaster, really hard to play. And then one day I was walking along a road in Hounslow, near where I lived in West London, near London Airport, and I saw a guitar not unlike this one hanging up in a shop window. And I'd never seen a guitar like this. I thought it looked like a Strat that somebody had cut a bit off. I didn't know the guitar even existed, because you see the funny cutaway shape here. And I went in and tried it out, and it certainly played a lot better than my guitar. So I traded it in. I traded a brand new guitar in for I have no idea the vintage of the one I have. It just seemed like opportunity. I'd seen one other guy playing this guitar in London, a fellow called Danny Adler, a great group called Rugulator, and he played all kind of funky stuff on it, and I could never dream of playing. He could play like Clean Up Woman and all that sort of that kind of little chop stuff. I thought, well, that's a versatile guitar, and he, you know, it certainly, I was a rhythm player, so I didn't need any guitar that you sustained much, and I knew it did that, and it had a slightly less shrill sound than the Telecaster, but it also had this little gadget on it, and you know, I wrote some songs that were used, and I wrote like Watching the Detectives. I like that kind of spy movie kind of guitar, and you could do that pretty good on this guitar. So I took it in and I used it on the rest of the sessions, and that is actually the guitar. When I went on my the second trip to America, it had this attractive furniture varnish finish, the original one that somebody had put on it. It may even been a tad shinier than this, but it was really just home furniture varnish like you would have on your auntie's footstool. So I had it stripped off and I had it taken to Valdez in Los Angeles, and he put this not entirely attractive grey finish on it, and my name up the neck, because I was always into country and western style guitar, sort of gimmicks like that. And I figured nobody would nick it then, because it would be useless to them. And I had a spare by then, which has just my surname on it. Of course, it's a little confusing if you ever have to play this guitar in an emergency if you've never played it. I remember I was in a after-hours jam situation with Jerry Garcia once, and he looked at it and didn't know what the hell to do with it. He ended up playing my guitar. And if Jerry didn't know his way around a fretboard given, and he played an alembic with all those scrolls on it, then you can see how confusing that can be if you've never held it before. But this here one is as close to feeling like mine as I can imagine. I found a lot of Jazzmasters in second-hand stores, and they nearly always had heavy flat wound strings on them, and the bridges were always screwed up, which led me to believe that being mainly used by rhythm guitar players and dance bands. Probably a lot of R&B groups used them. You see a lot of pictures in the 60s with R&B, the rhythm player playing one of these, very chunky sound. The only other player at the time that played one, well, the two guys from television, Tom Verlaine and Richard Lloyd, played them. But I hadn't seen pictures of those guys. I'd heard their record, and it wasn't until they came over and I saw them that they were playing the same guitar as me, at least some of the time. Of course, they did a lot more with it than I did, you know. And that was a record that I listened to a lot, that Marquee Moon. So I was kind of happy that you could make that kind of noise with the guitar, although I never attempted to do anything like that with it. I just played changes behind my singing. And then later on it seemed to kind of in and out of fashion, you know. There were various different people in the early 90s. I think Kurt Cobain played one for a while. I mean, I know he played a Duosonic or something like that, but I think he played one. So when somebody gets on the television and they're a famous rock and roll star, then a kid who's 14 just knows that person. They don't know that I ever played one any more than they know who Tom Verlaine is or Danny Adler or anybody else in Garnet Mim's band that may have played one in 1965. You see pictures sometimes of people playing them. The one thing you don't see, oddly enough, for a guitar named as is many jazz people playing them. I don't know why they called it a jazz, because I've never seen a jazz player playing one. Although the mellower cut on the bass does actually sound pretty. And if you roll off it can sound pretty, But there you go. I used to take this little switch up because this cut, whatever this is, it sounded kind of dull, and I would be halfway through something and I would suddenly lose all my volume. So I used to take that down so that I didn't accidentally go to that position. It has, I think everybody does that. Yeah. It was designed obviously for the mellower sound of the guitar's name that nobody wants. Well, I think that some people did actually play. I mean, there are some pictures of some jazz people playing Telecasters, but obviously mainly because it was the first solid body electric guitar. So, of course, the novelty of it alone would have encouraged people who were playing at high volume and didn't want the cello body feedback. But this guitar, I don't know, it's had a funny life. And I've always stuck with it. I always come back to it. I've done all sorts of different music, but whenever it's involved electric guitar, I don't think there's one record I've made on which the Jazzmaster doesn't feature somewhere. This is a brutal sort of sounding guitar. Suits the way I play. Watching the detective.